Hi guys, welcome back. I just wanted to quickly talk to you about the concept of God remembering you. I think sometimes, like me personally, I know that a lot of times I feel quite forgotten, especially when I might be doing something that I shouldn't do, or I might be in a situation where I'm not blessing or loving on God the way that I'm used to. Like, I used to spend a lot of time with God. I used to just love on Him all the time. I used to just give Him so much of my time and so much of my attention. And sometimes I feel like when you're not at the place where you're at the place where you feel like you're doing your best, or your holiness standards is like up here, sometimes when you're not in that place, you kind of feel like you're kind of not worthy to stand in God's presence, or if you do stand in His presence, you feel a bit like shackled down to worship Him, or a bit shackled down to give Him praise, because you just know that you haven't really been at the place where you've been giving your best. And sometimes as well, like when life isn't going the way you want it to, we all have plans and we have purposes, and we want to be wealthy, and we want to be able to, well, I know I want to be able to travel the world and just get around and do so many things and see so much and experience God, and to be able to declare, like David did, how marvelous are the works of your hands, because I've actually got to a point where I've just seen God in the fullness, or not even the fullness, because we can never really understand the fullness of God, but to see Him at a place of glory, to see the weight of His glory to such a point that I'm just like, Lord, how glorious and marvelous is the work of your hands. And sometimes when we don't get that, or we don't experience that, or we don't see that, or life is a struggle, there's all these things that come up on you, like bills and rent and future, and the concept of getting married, and when are you going to get married, and all these things that you keep thinking about all the times. And sometimes when things aren't going the way you think it should have gone, or your plans aren't coming to fruition, then you feel a bit like God has forgotten you. And sometimes you pray to God, or sometimes you're angry with Him and you question Him and you say to Him, like, Lord, like, where are you? I don't see you. I don't feel you. I don't hear you. And you feel like so lonely and so by yourself. I was really reminded last week, actually, that God hasn't forgotten you. I was going through a really hard time, and if you guys watched my last video, you know that I was going through a really bad time, and God just sent someone to remind me that, do you know what I mean, like He is there and He's taking care of things, even if I can't see it, and even if I'm not experiencing it, and even if I don't understand it, that He is really, really, really taking care of things in the background. And I was so grateful. Like, I felt, number one, I felt relief, and number two, I felt gratefulness, because to know that the King of Glory will step down from glory and come down to a place where He's actually like, you know what, I'm just stepping out of eternity into time to let you know that I care about you and I'm thinking about you, and like, you're on my mind. And I think that is such an amazing thing. That is so much love. And so really, I just wanted to come here today and remind you guys that regardless of what's going on, or regardless of what you're going through, regardless of how you feel, and if you feel downtrodden and you feel like people don't understand you and people don't care, and like you love people, and sometimes like you tell people about what you're going through, and when you tell them about what you're going through, like, they understand, but people get on with their lives. They can't sit here forever just listening to your issues and listening to your problems, and so sometimes you feel a bit like alone, but you're not alone. You're really, really, really not alone. I can honestly say you're not alone, and God is there, and He is looking out for you, and He is taking care of you, even though sometimes you might not feel like it, and sometimes you might not understand what's going on or why it's going on. God is really taking care of you. And I really want to remind you guys as well that the times that God is most active in your life as well, one of the times He's most active in your life is when you're going through that experience that you feel like you're in the desert, and you feel like there's no hope, and you feel like you don't know what to do, where to go, you feel like no one's caring. Those are the times when God is actually really, 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 He just cranks up like the time that he spends with you, and he cranks up the love that he spends for you, and he cranks up, like, you know, because he knows that in those moments you need him most. And so he cranks up, like, the way he takes care of you and the way he just has your back. And, you know, like this week when I was really going through stuff and God was reminding me that, you know, like, I am here and I remember you. Like he reminded me of the times when he was most with Israel. For example, the Bible said that Israel was in bondage for 400 years. You know, Pharaoh was Pharaoh bondaged them for 400 years, and they were kind of like in slavery to his house for 400 years, just working and working, and they cried out to the Lord and they kept crying. And then the Bible said that when they got to their peak where it was almost like they couldn't take it anymore, then God remembered Israel. You know, the Bible talks about when, you know, man like David cried out unto the Lord and God remembered him. And there's so many people, like, if you really, 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 really look at the Lord and you really, really look at the word, it was when those people, like, they'd almost given up on hope and they just thought that they couldn't do it anymore. And that's when God, the Bible said, God remembers. You know what I mean? Like, the Bible says that about Jacob's wife. So Jacob was married to Leah and Rebecca, which is what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago. And the Bible said that when Rachel couldn't have children, Leah could have children, but Rachel couldn't. And Leah and Rachel, sorry guys, Leah and Rachel. And the Bible said that Leah could have children, but Rachel couldn't. And, you know, the Bible says that when Rachel had almost given up, you know, she'd given her servant to Jacob and she'd finally had a child and she was pleased with the child that she'd had. And she'd kind of settled in this whole, like, thing where it was almost like she couldn't have children and she didn't know what to do. And then the Bible said, and then God remembered Rachel and he opened her womb. And then you see women like Hannah, for example, who was in such a barren state. Her predecessor, you know, the other woman who'd had children before her, predecessed her in childbirth. Penina was taking the mick and she was laughing at her and she was, you know, kind of like looking at her and just doing all these things to her, and Anna prayed and prayed and prayed. The Bible says she prayed so much she cried out her soul, and there was an anguish in her soul. And the Bible said that, you know, the priest saw her and he thought she was drunk because that's how angry she was. And, you know, she was crying out and she was just like waiting. And you can imagine after waiting all that time how much hope she'd given up. But then the Bible said, and then God remembered. And then you got like Zachariah, for example, and Elizabeth, who couldn't have children. They were almost past the age of childbearing. They were so old. And then God remembered and God gave Elizabeth a child. And then there's so many women and men as well in the Bible who almost given up hope. They'd almost passed the age. Sarah was past the age of childbearing. Abraham couldn't have children with Sarah because she was past the age of childbearing. But then God remembered the promise that he made to them, that said, you know, Abraham, be fruitful and multiply, you know, out of you will flow a nation, out of your loins will come a nation. God remembered that, and then God gave them a son, Isaac, in their old age. And then Sarah, you know, she named her child Isaac because she said, God has made me laugh. And, you know, sometimes, like, you feel like you don't know what to do and you don't know where to go and you feel forgotten. But I'm here to say to you that God remembers, and he will make you laugh. He will bring out of your situation, but out of this barren land, out of this place where you feel like there is nothing you can do, and out of the place where you feel like that, you know, there is no blessing and there is no home. God will just bring out an Isaac out of you, and God will, you know, you will look at God and you will be like, Lord, thank you for remembering me. Thank you for making me laugh. Because, like, God has not forgotten you. You know, God does not forget. The only time the Bible talks about God ever forgetting is when he says, I will throw your sins in the sea of forgetfulness and I will remember them no more. That is the only time he talks about forgetting your sin, forgetting, you know, the former things. Those are the only times that God actually talks about forgetting. In all other times he remembers. He actually really, 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 really does remember you, and he does have you in his heart, and he has you in his mind, and he has you in his attention. And sometimes it seems hard to actually understand that and to actually comprehend that and to actually even believe that. But when God steps down off glory and just does things, you're just like, wow, Lord, you actually remember me. You know, the Bible talks about Lazarus, who was dead for 4 days. Imagine after 4 days, even his family, like, they hadn't really forgotten him. They were, because they were mourning him, but they never once thought that he was able to be resurrected from the dead, because to them that chapter of his life was over. He was now dead, he was now buried, he was now rotten, he was now stinking, and that area of his life was over. They were angry with Jesus because they thought he'd forgotten, because they sent to call him and he didn't come, and they were waited for him, and their brother died, was buried, and he didn't come. And then finally when Jesus turned up, they're saying to him, like, Lord, if you had been here, our brother would have lived. But what are you doing? And God said, it's fine. It's fine, Lazarus, he can, I can resurrect him. And they just didn't understand, because for them, God had forgotten this man who this man who Lazarus loved, the friend who Lazarus loved. He'd forgotten them. And Jesus turned up and just worked in the situation and literally just raised up this man from the dead, raised up this dead situation that there was no way that he should have been able to have life, but Jesus just injected himself. And that's the thing, when God injects himself into your situation, like, it just really completely and utterly, like, reform the situation and breathes life into it. And so we have to be reminded that even though it might seem like God has forgotten you, He's not forgotten you, and He's an on-time God. And when He turns up and He injects Himself into that situation, the blessing and the love and the mercy that will flow from His loins, that will flow from the love and the memory that He has for you, will be so much more that you can contain. So whatever you're going through and whatever situation you're in, just be encouraged and know that God remembers you and He is on His way. And even though it might seem like He's 4 days late or 4 years late or 40 years late or whatever it is that you feel in your heart, just know that Jesus is on His way and He remembers you. And when He comes, He will increase and He will bless you in a way that you never thought you could be blessed. And you will be left like, Lord, how awesome are you that you remember somebody like me, somebody who don't deserve your love, doesn't deserve your glory. It's not like we're deserving. God doesn't give us things because we deserve it. He gives us things because He promised it to us. That's all it is. And so be encouraged in knowing that God remembers you. He does. He does. Whether you feel like it or not, God remembers you. And He is able to let rain fall in the desert. There were so many women I mentioned that were barren situations that they couldn't fix, situations that doctors couldn't fix, situations that lawyers couldn't fix. Other women laughed at them, men laughed at them. They thought they would never have an inheritance or have an heir. Back then, heirs were so important. They thought they would never have an heir, and then God remembered them. And all of them blurted out male, because God was like, I'm not just going to give you a son, I'm not going to give you a child, I'm not just going to work on your barren land, but I'm going to give you an heir. I'm going to bless you in a way that your inheritance and your name and your fortune can carry on into eternity. So yeah, guys, I'm saying all that to say to you that God totally remembers you, and He will turn up and He will just surprise you. And we are so grateful to know that as well, that we are remembered, that, like this king, like this guy who walks upon the circle of the earth, speaks into eternity, and it is so, speaks on the earth and it trembles and fulfills his commands. The King of glory, the Lord of lords, the one who established the heavens and the earth, the one who spoke and it is established forever, the one who put the moon and the stars in the sky and they have burnt since the beginning of time. This same God remembers feeble you, little you, who mankind has said all kind of things about, and they've put you down and they've trodden you, and they said that you would never make it, or you might never amount to anything in life, or you might even not even be that person. You might be a person who has wealth and fortune and money and all these things, and you just feel like there's something missing from your life, there's something missing from your heart, and you're just not satisfied. And God will come and satisfy your soul, because that's the most important thing. So yeah, thank God for remembering us. Catch you soon. Bye.